As I sat at my desk, my mind drifted back through the years, retracing every step of my journey with Jocelyn, especially our honeymoon. It felt like the most vivid of memories, the kind you can relive in your heart no matter how much time passes. I couldn't help but smile as I thought of those golden days in Florida, a time that felt so perfect. It was as though the world had paused just for us. The sheer magic of that trip continues to occupy a special place in my heart, a treasure trove of memories that shaped the foundation of our love. From the very beginning, our time together felt like an escape from the pressures of life, a peaceful retreat we longed for. As we walked hand in hand along Clearwater Beach, the warm ocean waves brushing our feet, the gentle scent of jasmine filling the air, we were enveloped in an undeniable sense of romance and tranquility. But what made that trip truly extraordinary wasn't just the breathtaking scenery. It was the experiences we shared. Whether we were hiking through thick forests, finding hidden waterfalls, or simply pausing to appreciate the raw beauty of nature, I always felt that we were in perfect harmony with each other and the world around us. The cozy beachside cottage in Key West offered an unrivaled view of the sunsets, which painted the sky with vibrant hues every evening. We spent countless nights wrapped in each other's arms, savoring intimate dinners on the beach, enjoying the freshest seafood and local delicacies, and feeling nothing but love in the air. But above all, it was Jocelyn's smile, so warm and genuine, that made every moment unforgettable. That trip was more than just a vacation. It was a celebration of our love, and a chapter of memories I could never let go of. I was so lost in these thoughts that I didn't hear my secretary approaching until she was right beside me. She greeted me with a warm smile and joked, "Did you win the lottery or something?" I chuckled and explained that it wasn't money, but something far more valuable. Jocelyn had been incredibly sweet lately, making me feel appreciated in ways I hadn't felt in years. It almost felt like we were on a second honeymoon, a beautiful revival of our bond. For the past couple of weeks, I found myself thinking about her all the time, calling her multiple times a day just to hear her voice. It was like being a teenager again, filled with excitement and anticipation. I couldn't help it. I was happy, and I wanted that feeling to last forever. Jocelyn and I had always had a strong marriage, but after 3 decades, it was easy to fall into a routine. Lately, though, things had shifted. She'd become more affectionate, craving closeness almost every night, bringing back some of the habits we had when we were younger. I didn't question it. I welcomed the change, believing it was simply a renewed connection. That afternoon, with the anticipation of a surprise in my mind, I left work early. I had a romantic evening planned, 2 dozen roses, a heartfelt note, her favorite wine, and a box of chocolate-covered strawberries. I was also going to tell her just how much I loved her and surprise her with a 7-day cruise I'd secretly booked for us. My excitement built with each step as I arrived home, eager to see her. But when I walked into the house, expecting to find Jocelyn in the kitchen, I was greeted instead by our daughter, Sharon, sitting at the table. I kissed her on the forehead and asked, "Hey, sweetie, where's your mom?" Something felt off. Just a couple of weeks ago, Jocelyn had confided in Sharon about her deep internal conflict, unsure about going through with what she was contemplating. Sharon had reassured her, encouraging her to pursue what she thought she needed, but that didn't make it any easier for me to grasp. Now, as I stood there in the kitchen, the air felt heavier than ever. After Jocelyn's initial hesitation, Sharon's words seemed to settle into her heart, offering a new sense of clarity. She didn't want to hurt Floyd, the man she had spent over 30 years with, but she couldn't shake the desire for something else, something different. Sharon's reassurance had given her a sense of permission, but it still felt wrong. Nonetheless, she decided that if she were to go through with it, she would do everything in her power to make Floyd feel loved and appreciated, ensuring that their home was filled with warmth and affection until the very night she had planned with Alex. The guilt still gnawed at her as she sat in the art studio that Floyd had built for her, surrounded by unfinished projects and the overwhelming sense of unexpressed creativity. She had once been able to pour herself into her work, but now her thoughts were clouded with the image of what lay ahead. Despite the confusion and inner conflict, Sharon's words echoed in her mind. She had to show Floyd just how much he meant to her, for one last time before this experiment would begin. The following evening, Jocelyn made a conscious effort to rekindle the spark between her and Floyd. After a long shower, she slipped into her favorite baby doll nightgown, one she hadn't worn in years, and carefully applied her makeup, wanting to look as attractive and desirable as possible. When Floyd walked in through the door, he was met with the sight of Jocelyn, radiating confidence and excitement. He smiled, clearly surprised and pleased, and immediately pulled her into a passionate kiss. The night that followed was filled with intimacy they hadn't shared in years. Floyd's beaming smile, his affectionate words, and his genuine appreciation for the effort Jocelyn had put into their time together made her feel deeply connected to him again. For a fleeting moment, Jocelyn questioned her decision. The following weeks brought a surprising transformation in Floyd. He seemed happier, more affectionate, and much more engaged. It was as though they had rediscovered each other, the early days of their marriage rekindled in the warmth of their shared moments. Jocelyn started to feel more content than she had in years, and for the first time in a long time, she felt the weight of her decision to meet Alex become uncertain. She confided in Sharon, expressing that maybe, just maybe, she didn't need this experience with Alex after all. "Dad and I have found our spark again," Jocelyn said with a sense of relief, hoping it would last. Sharon, ever the supportive daughter, tried to offer a balanced perspective, suggesting that Jocelyn give it a little more time before canceling her plans with Alex. "See how things go in the next couple of weeks. Enjoy what you have now, and if it works out, you can always call things off last minute," she advised, understanding that Jocelyn needed to weigh the choice carefully. "But just remember, this opportunity might not come around again." Jocelyn, still uncertain but willing to give her marriage another chance, agreed with Sharon's suggestion. But the conversation soon turned to Alex, as Jocelyn asked Sharon to tell her more about him. Sharon explained that Alex's life had been marked by hardship. His wife, Susan, had been diagnosed with a brain tumor, and Alex had devoted himself entirely to her until her passing. His grief had consumed him, leaving him emotionally distant and depressed, unable to think about dating for quite some time. He had struggled with loneliness, unable to overcome the loss of the love of his life. As Sharon spoke, something clicked for Jocelyn. Perhaps she could offer Alex the same understanding and support she'd been seeking for herself. The realization left her pondering whether she could help him in the way he needed, just as she was attempting to find herself. This new thought was both reassuring and terrifying, but it set a new course in motion for Jocelyn, one where she hoped she could provide what both she and Alex had been missing, even if it came at the expense of everything she had built with Floyd. As I sat there, the weight of Sharon's words hit me like a ton of bricks. The sense of disbelief was suffocating. I had just been planning the most thoughtful surprise for Jocelyn, a romantic week-long cruise to celebrate the love we had shared for so long. I couldn't fathom what Sharon was telling me. My daughter, my flesh and blood, was confirming something that felt like a nightmare. Jocelyn, the woman I had spent 30 years with, had gone on a date with someone else. My mind was a whirlwind of confusion, anger, and hurt as I processed the news. Sharon's tears were still flowing, her face filled with regret and concern for me. She had been the one to bring it all to light, and now I was left with nothing but questions. I looked at her, my heart breaking, and asked, "Where is she, Sharon? Where is your mother?" My voice was rising, betraying the storm of emotions inside me. I couldn't control it. This was the woman I had shared a life with, the one who was supposed to be my partner, the one I had loved with all my heart. Sharon, clearly distressed by my reaction, tried to calm me down, but her words didn't have the desired effect. "Dad, please listen," she pleaded. "Mom loves you, but she needed something new. It's just for one night. She'll come back tomorrow. She didn't want to hurt you." But how could this not hurt? How could she just betray me, even if it was just one night? I couldn't wrap my mind around it. I stood up, my body trembling, my mind racing. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. How could I have missed the signs? I had been planning a future with Jocelyn, thinking everything was finally falling into place after years of hard work and sacrifices. And now this betrayal, was turning my world upside down. I had believed, like Sharon, that we had found our spark again. But was it just a lie? Had everything been a facade? Sharon's soft voice broke through my thoughts, trying to offer some comfort. Dad, I know it's hard, but after 30 years of marriage, Mom felt like she needed to do this. It's just one night. Please understand. But how could I? How could I possibly understand something so painful, so completely wrong? The pain was so raw, so fresh. I felt like I was suffocating. I sank back into the chair, trying to steady my breathing, but it was impossible. Everything I thought I knew, everything I believed in, was crumbling before me. Jocelyn wasn't the woman I thought she was. She had made a choice, and now I had to face the consequences. I had spent so long trying to build a life with her, but now it seemed like all of that had been a lie. The anger inside me bubbled over, and I stood up again, not knowing what to do. Sharon was still crying, and I was at a loss for words. My hands clenched into fists, my mind swirling with the image of Jocelyn, out there with someone else, as if everything we had shared meant nothing. Could I ever trust her again? Could I forgive her for this? The questions came, one after another, as the reality of the situation sank in. As I stood there, the words Sharon had just spoken echoed in my mind, and I could hardly process them. How could she be so involved in this? This was supposed to be between Jocelyn and me, not her. My thoughts raced as I tried to comprehend what had just happened. Sharon, why are you involved in this? I demanded, feeling the anger building up. This is between your mother and me. You shouldn't be in the middle of it. My voice cracked as I tried to contain the whirlwind of emotions coursing through me. Sharon, with tears welling up in her eyes, tried to explain. Dad, you know Mom and I are close. We talk about everything, she said, her voice trembling. She confided in me that things had slowed down between you two, and she felt neglected. My friend's dad lost his wife a few years ago, and he's been so lonely. I thought they could help each other, so I introduced them. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My daughter, the one I had raised, had orchestrated this betrayal. Are you telling me you set your mother up on a date with your friend's father? I asked, feeling the weight of the words crash down on me. Is this real? Did you really do this? My anger erupted, and I stood up, knocking the chair over in the process. Sharon recoiled, clearly frightened by the intensity of my reaction. I began pacing, my disbelief turning into fury. Answer me, Sharon. My wife, your mother, is out with your friend's dad because of you. How could you do this to me? Sharon cowered under my anger, her tears streaming down her face. She whispered, I'm sorry, Daddy. I really am. It sounds bad when you put it that way, but I did it out of love for both of you and for him. She looked at me, desperately trying to justify her actions. Love for them? What about me? Do I mean nothing to you? My voice shook with pain and disbelief. Am I just some fool you can toss aside while you play matchmaker? I stood before her, shaking, fighting to control my emotions. Where is she, Sharon? Where is your mother? What do you mean she won't be home until tomorrow? Sharon answered, her voice barely audible. Dad, they went to a restaurant. I don't know which one. Yes, they're spending the night together, but it's just this one time. I swear she'll be back tomorrow, and she only loves you. All she's been saying for the last 2 weeks is how much she loves you. I felt the anger and disbelief swell in my chest. So all this time I thought her affection was real, but it was just to ease her guilt? Well, Sharon, this won't end the way you or your mother think it will. I promise you that. Tears streamed down her face as she tried to plead with me. It's not like that, Dad. She never pretended to love you. She's been doing everything she can to show you how much she cares. Can't you just give her this one night? You've had 30 great years together. She loves you so much and can't imagine life without you. Please don't throw it all away. Her words were desperate, but my heart had already closed. No, Sharon, I replied coldly. That ship sailed the moment your mother agreed to go out with another man. Sharon looked at me, trying to calm me down, and mention how nice the man was. He's my friend Mary's dad. He's really nice, and I think you two would get along if you met. I stood there, my mind racing. Oh, really? I said sarcastically. You think we'd be great buddies? Maybe we can start hanging out, and I'll offer him your mom on the weekends. How's that sound? Maybe we can even be drinking buddies while I watch him date my wife. Sharon sank into her chair, realizing her plan had completely unraveled. She had never seen me this angry, and my sarcasm hit its mark. After pacing the room, I took a deep breath and, finally, with venom in my voice, said, "Listen carefully, Sharon. I want you to leave now. I need to be alone to process what you and your mother have done to me. Don't call me, don't write, don't try to reach me. You are no longer my daughter. You're dead to me. Do you understand? I'm not your father anymore." "Please, Dad, no," Sharon sobbed, her face buried in her hands. "I love you. I want to stay here with you tonight. Mom and I planned for me to stay so you wouldn't be alone. Please don't send me away." But the hurt was too deep, and I couldn't take it anymore. "Leave, Sharon," I repeated coldly. "Your level of disrespect makes me question whether you ever truly respected me as your father. You're your mother's daughter, through and through. I worked hard for years to give you and her a better life, and this is how you repay me. Get out. I have no daughter now." Through her tears, she pleaded again. "Dad, I love you. Don't say this. Just wait for Mom to explain everything tomorrow. You've had 30 wonderful years together, but I wasn't going to wait. She might have one thing, or two, or 1,000, but she'll never have me again," I said bitterly. "Forgiveness is out of the question. Everyone involved will pay, including the man who took your mother out. Now leave." Tears streamed down Sharon's face as she fled the house, the weight of her actions crashing down on her. She never expected me to react this way, and as she ran, she realized the enormity of the mistake she had made by helping her mother with this plan. She had hoped I would understand, but my fury left no room for hope. I stood there, still trembling, and dialed Jocelyn's number, only for it to go straight to voicemail. I left message after message, begging her to come home, but there was no response. By 2 a.m., I realized she wasn't coming back that night. Exhausted from the emotional strain, I sat there, staring blankly at the TV, though I barely registered what was playing. The house felt colder than ever. My world was falling apart. My spine, and for a moment, Jocelyn felt a sense of freedom, a detachment from the years of routine that had defined her marriage. She allowed herself to be swept up in the excitement of the evening, the thrill of something new and forbidden. As Alex's hands explored her, she couldn't help but feel a rush, but somewhere deep inside, a small voice whispered that this wasn't who she was or who she wanted to be. Still, the excitement was intoxicating. It felt like the world was opening up to her in a way it hadn't in years. This was what she had been searching for: the excitement, the attention, the novelty. As Alex leaned in to kiss her again, Jocelyn was momentarily distracted by a thought of Floyd. She had loved him deeply once, and even now, a part of her still felt that love. But it was fading faster than she could have ever anticipated. The weight of her betrayal began to settle on her chest, but it was quickly replaced by another surge of desire. "What am I doing?" she whispered to herself, but the question was quickly drowned out by the urgency of the moment. Meanwhile, Floyd was far from where Jocelyn was. After setting fire to everything that represented the last 30 years of his life, he had driven away in a daze, the weight of what he had done hitting him harder with every passing second. The destruction of the studio, filled with her art, the photos, the memories, it all seemed like the only way to get back at her for what she had done. But deep inside, he knew it wasn't just revenge. It was a cry for help, a last-ditch effort to regain some semblance of control over his life. As the flames had consumed the studio, Floyd felt a strange mix of relief and sorrow. Watching it all burn felt like the end of an era, the destruction of something that once meant the world to him. He had been living with the lie of their marriage, but now, the truth was undeniable. His world was gone, turned to ash and smoke, just like the studio. Shaken and unsure of what the future held, Floyd drove off to a motel, distancing himself from the chaos of his life. He had done something irreversible, but he felt no regret. Not yet. Maybe not ever. He had left the house, left Jocelyn, and left his daughter with a broken heart. But in that moment, all he wanted was to escape. The next day, Floyd woke up to a storm of notifications. His phone exploded with messages from Jocelyn, from Sharon, from the sheriff. The weight of the destruction he had caused was setting in, but he had no idea how deep the impact had gone. He hadn't realized the extent of the fallout until he checked his messages and heard from Sharon. His daughter had been left in the wake of the mess he had created, and Jocelyn. She was now fully immersed in her affair. Jocelyn, stepping out of the Uber at the restaurant, felt a strange sense of freedom. This was it, the night she had been waiting for, the night she had been fantasizing about. Her emotions were a whirlwind, but the attraction between her and Alex was undeniable. He noticed every detail about her, from her dress to the way she carried herself. The compliments and the chemistry ignited a spark in Jocelyn that had been dormant for far too long. The date unfolded with a sense of excitement she hadn't felt in years. The flirtation, the newness, the thrill. This was what she had been missing, what she had been searching for. It was all so intoxicating. As they walked to their table, Jocelyn couldn't help but feel a sense of empowerment, as though she were in control of her life for the first time in years. She had always prided herself on being a devoted wife, but tonight, she was someone else, someone who had rediscovered herself. By the time they reached the hotel room, everything felt like it was happening in a blur. Jocelyn hesitated for just a second as the elevator ascended to the 14th floor, but Alex's touch and the pull of the moment erased all doubts. Inside the room, as Alex unzipped her dress, Jocelyn felt the rush of excitement take over. She was ready to let go of the life she had left behind, ready to embrace whatever this night had in store for her. And for a moment, it felt like it could be the beginning of something new, something she had always craved but had been too afraid to pursue. But deep inside, in the quiet corners of her mind, Jocelyn knew that once this night was over, everything would change. The choices she made tonight would define the path she took from here on out, and she wasn't sure if she was ready to face the consequences. Still, she went with it, lost in the passion of the moment, unable to stop herself. The night stretched on, and as the hours passed, both Floyd and Jocelyn would find themselves irrevocably changed by the choices they had made, with no way of turning back. As the sun streamed through the window, Jocelyn couldn't help but feel conflicted. The night with Alex had been everything she'd needed, the passion, the excitement, the newness. But the moment she stepped outside and saw the flashing lights, her world seemed to crash. Her phone buzzed incessantly, filled with missed calls and texts. The guilt overwhelmed her as she read Floyd's messages, each one a reminder of the hurt she had caused him. The rush of emotions was too much to bear, and she was now faced with the consequences of her actions. When Alex pulled into her neighborhood, the sight of fire trucks and police cars in front of her house made her stomach drop. Her mind raced with questions as she wondered what had happened. "Mom, where are you?" Sharon's voice crackled through the phone, filled with panic. "There's been a fire at the house, and we've been trying to reach you all night. Dad's missing. No one knows where he is." Jocelyn's heart sank as she hung up and hurried toward the scene, her mind swirling with fear and confusion. She had never imagined her night of indulgence would lead to this. As Alex parked the car, Jocelyn's legs felt weak, and she had to steady herself as she approached the firefighters. One of them turned to her. "Are you the homeowner?" he asked, his voice measured but serious. "Yes, I'm Jocelyn Harper," she said, her voice shaky as she tried to hold it together. The firefighters' news hit her like a blow. "We saved most of the house, but the back porch took significant damage. Unfortunately, the studio couldn't be saved. There's nothing left but remnants." Jocelyn felt her knees give out beneath her, and Alex caught her just in time. She sat on the curb, stunned, as the firefighter continued. "We're still investigating the cause of the fire, but a police detective needs to speak with you." Jocelyn stood, still reeling, and made her way to the back of the house, where Sergeant Bennett was waiting. "Mrs. Harper, do you have any idea what might have caused the fire?" he asked. Jocelyn, her voice barely a whisper, replied, "No, I wasn't home last night." The sergeant asked, "Are you her husband?" Turning to Alex, who stood beside her, he asked, "No, just a friend," Alex replied. The detective's next question hit her like a freight train. "Do you know where your husband is?" "I don't," Jocelyn admitted, her face flushed with shame. "I haven't spoken to him." The sergeant's tone became more serious. Where were you last night? I was with Alex at the Hilton downtown, she answered quietly, feeling the weight of judgment in the detective's gaze. As she stood there, amidst the remains of her life, Jocelyn felt the overwhelming burden of her choices. She had just admitted to an affair, and now Floyd was missing. The detective had more questions. Are you and your husband separated? He asked. Jocelyn's heart sank. No, we're happily married, she insisted, though the words sounded absurd after what she had just confessed. The detective handed her his card. When you hear from him, please let him know he can contact me. Jocelyn nodded numbly, a wave of emotions crashing over her. Anger at the destruction of her sanctuary, the studio she had built for herself and her art, now reduced to ashes. And fear, the deep, gnawing fear of what Floyd's rage might mean for their marriage. As she stood there, knowing she had to find Floyd to explain herself, she realized that no matter how much she tried to justify her actions, there was no turning back. The life she had built with him was unraveling before her eyes, and she had no idea if it could ever be repaired. I called Sharon, my heart racing as the phone rang. Sharon, have you heard from your dad? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. No, I haven't spoken to him since last night, she replied. Her voice cracked, sending a chill down my spine. Mom, why didn't you stay with him like we planned? She continued, her words sending a shock through me. He kicked me out and disowned me, Sharon revealed, her voice breaking. I froze in disbelief. Floyd had never said anything like that before. If he truly disowned her, the situation was worse than I could have ever imagined. When I finally entered the house, the smell of smoke hit me immediately. The walls were stained with soot, and our once cozy home now looked like a disaster area, uninhabitable until repairs could be made. I went to the bedroom, hoping to gather some clothes, but when I opened the closet, I froze. My things were gone. My clothes, shoes, jewelry, everything was missing. My heart pounded as panic crept in. I rushed to my nightstand to find my wedding rings, but they weren't there. Floyd must have seen the missing rings and assumed the worst. I frantically searched the house, trying to find any sign of my belongings, but they had all been cleared out. It hit me like a ton of bricks. He had destroyed everything. I ran to the studio, hoping against hope that some of my things might have survived the fire. As I looked through the debris, I found only a few photo frames and fragments of clothes. It was clear that Floyd had obliterated everything, cutting me out of his life in one devastating blow. Tears streamed down my face as I called Sharon again, telling her what had happened. I didn't know where to go, and though Alex had offered me a place to stay, I didn't want to see him. I needed to be alone. I've lost your father, I sobbed into the phone. Mom, don't say that, Sharon pleaded. Dad loves you. I know he does. I hurt him, Sharon. I don't blame him. What I did is unforgivable. I should have talked to him instead of going on that date. I admitted, my voice trembling. Mom, don't blame yourself. You can stay with us until the house is fixed, Sharon offered. We'll buy you new clothes and get you settled. Tonight, you're staying with us. But I couldn't shake the overwhelming loss. All my work, everything I built for 20 years, it's all gone. I lamented, the tears drawing the attention of passing neighbors. Just then, my phone rang. It was Floyd. I barely managed to breathe as I answered. Floyd, is that you? Hi, Jocelyn. His voice was cold and detached. I know everything. From your daughter. Yes, your daughter, not mine. You're both dead to me. This may be the last time we talk. Floyd, no. Please, don't say that. I love you. I pleaded. The studio, it's gone. Did you do this? Jocelyn, you did this. Not me, he replied, his voice shaking with rage. Maybe I didn't physically start the fire, but your betrayal is what burned everything to the ground. When I saw your wedding rings left behind and realized you gave yourself to someone else, you died to me. What you did is unforgivable. No, please, Floyd. We've had 30 wonderful years together. Can't we talk and work this out? My heart broke as I tried to reason with him. No, Jocelyn. You planned to betray me. You gave me 2 weeks of love to ease your guilt and then cheated with our daughter's help. There's no way to accept or forgive such treachery. Floyd, please. don't do this. I love you. I begged, my voice trembling. This is over. Contact my lawyer for anything further. Goodbye, Jocelyn. Floyd, wait. Floyd. I screamed into the phone, but he had already hung up. My entire world had come crashing down. I collapsed onto the floor, feeling like I had lost everything. Sharon arrived just as I was calling Floyd again. Her face was streaked with tears as she rushed to me, and we embraced, mourning the loss of everything we had held dear. We couldn't stay in the wreckage of our home, so we headed to Sharon's house. When we got there, she told her husband, Mike, everything. His expression was one of shock and disbelief. Sharon, you arranged a date for your mother with another man, and you knew your dad would be alone. How could you do that to him? He was a good man, and you've shattered him, Mike said, his voice filled with disappointment. I'm shocked and disappointed. We need to talk about ourselves now. Having children is on hold until I figure out where your values lie, he added, his voice heavy with frustration. The weight of everything crashing down felt unbearable. I don't share them. Sharon was taken aback by Mike's anger. She hadn't expected him to react so harshly. But deep down, she knew the real issue wasn't just about their future. It was the collapse of her parents' marriage, her father's disappearance, and her mother's shattered happiness. Everything was falling apart because of one single night. 5 days later, Floyd returned to the house to assess the damage. He chose not to file an insurance claim to avoid further costs and contacted his lawyer, making it clear that the house was his and not part of the settlement. Jocelyn would get half of their savings, but no child support. When Floyd came home, a neighbor who knew Sharon from school called her, and she rushed over to the house. She found him standing in the bedroom, inspecting the damage. She ran to him, embracing him tightly. Daddy, I'm so sorry. Please forgive us. We love you, she pleaded. Floyd, however, stepped back. Sharon, I told you not to speak to me again, he said coldly. I can't forgive either of you. Sharon's voice trembled as she asked, No, you have to forgive me. I'm your daughter. You love me. I don't have a daughter anymore. Just a woman who broke my heart, Floyd replied, his words cutting deep. Now leave me alone. Sharon, desperate, tried again. Dad, Mom needs you. She's miserable. She misses you terribly. Please come over and talk to her. Floyd's face hardened. I will never speak to her again. Our marriage ended the moment she went on that date and left her wedding rings behind. You can both contact me through my lawyer. Sharon's voice cracked as she asked, Are you really going to end 30 years of marriage? Floyd shook his head. No. Your mother ended it when she chose another man over me. You both destroyed my happiness, and I won't forgive or forget. Now get out. Sharon left in tears, devastated by her father's words. She knew they would leave scars, wounds that no amount of time could heal. The next day, Jocelyn received the divorce papers. She was overwhelmed, finally realizing that her marriage had ended because of her infidelity. She tried to reconcile, sought counseling, and begged Floyd to talk, but he remained silent. Mike eventually reached out to Floyd to apologize for Sharon's involvement in the affair, but the damage was done. Mike reconsidered having children with Sharon, now uncertain about her loyalty and values. They entered couples counseling, trying to salvage their marriage. As for Jocelyn, she hoped to return to their rebuilt house, but the divorce decree awarded it to Floyd. She received half of their savings and $3,000 a month in alimony for 10 years, but Floyd had no intention of paying. Jocelyn was forced to find a job, something she hadn't done in 30 years. She moved from Sharon's apartment to a small one-room flat near the city and took a job at a small art gallery to make ends meet. Her once comfortable life was gone, along with the marriage she had taken for granted, all for one thrilling night. No amount of tears could wash away the regret and pain of that one affair. The man she had loved for 3 decades, the man who had built a life with her, was now gone. Sharon spiraled into a deep depression after her parents' divorce. She sought solace in therapy, trying to save her crumbling marriage. Months later, the house was fully restored, and Floyd continued to make the court-mandated payments. Then, without warning, he sold the house. After the sale, Jocelyn went to see him, desperate for reconciliation and forgiveness. When she rang the doorbell, a young couple opened the door. "Hello, how can we help you?" the woman asked. "I'm looking for Floyd Harper. Is he here?" Jocelyn asked, her voice trembling. "Oh, you mean the nice man who sold us the house?" "No, he mentioned he was leaving the country for a fresh start. He was incredibly kind. Are you Jocelyn by any chance?" Jocelyn nodded, her heart sinking. "Yes, I am." The woman handed her an envelope. "He said to give it to you if you ever came by." Jocelyn whispered, "Thank you," her voice barely audible, before walking away. "Enjoy your new home," the woman called after her. Jocelyn sat in her car, tears streaming down her face, realizing that she would never see Floyd again. The love she had so recklessly discarded was now truly gone. Returning to her small apartment, she sat on the bed, her hands shaking as she opened the letter Floyd had left for her. "Jocelyn, 30 remarkable years. I will forever cherish the beautiful life we shared. You were my first and only love, and I regret deeply that I couldn't be the husband you needed. If I had known you needed more, maybe things would have turned out differently. I wish you the best in life. Goodbye. I would have moved mountains for you, but you chose to walk this path alone." Floyd's words burned into Jocelyn's heart as she read his letter, a final farewell filled with pain and finality. Their marriage had come to an end in a way that she never could have anticipated, alone. The 2 wonderful weeks before his betrayal, when he had truly believed they had rekindled their love, were now nothing but a cruel illusion. Those days had been the happiest of their marriage, and to learn from Sharon that those precious moments had merely been a distraction while Jocelyn was plotting her affair shattered him beyond repair. He had come home that night, eager to surprise her, ready to give her 24 roses, her favorite chocolates, and a bottle of wine, with plans for a 7-day yacht cruise to celebrate their love. But instead, he discovered that her affection had been a cover for her betrayal. In that moment, he felt utterly humiliated. "Congratulations, Jocelyn. You've destroyed me and our marriage," Floyd wrote. "I can't stay in this city any longer. I've resigned from my job and started a new life in another country. Don't bother looking for me. I have no desire to speak to you or Sharon again. This chapter of my life is closed, and I am beginning a new one without either of you. It will take me years to heal from the pain you inflicted, but I will recover without you. I hope that night was worth everything we had together. I suspect it was. You and Sharon will have plenty to talk about. Have a happy life, and please forget me as I already have." Jocelyn thought she had no tears left, but after reading Floyd's letter, she cried uncontrollably. She curled up on the bed, overwhelmed by the regret and sadness that replaced the excitement and memories of her night with Alex. At 52 and alone, she saw nothing but a bleak future ahead. One selfish night had cost her everything. Meanwhile, Floyd had confronted Alex late one night before he left for Costa Rica. He showed up unannounced at Alex's house, seething with anger. "I'm Floyd Harper, Jocelyn's husband. You stole her from me," he said, his voice shaking with fury. Alex tried to explain, but Floyd wasn't in the mood to hear excuses. The anger and pain he'd been harboring for weeks exploded in an instant. He wielded a crowbar and left Alex broken and bruised. As Floyd walked away, he warned, "Take my advice. Messing with a married woman is bad for your health." By the time Alex reached the ER and reported the assault, Floyd was already boarding a flight to Costa Rica, far beyond the reach of U.S. law. Floyd knew he was free, no extradition for assault charges. Alex spent weeks in the hospital and months in physical therapy, adjusting to his new life. His reconstructed knees and the 25 stitches on his face served as permanent reminders of that fateful night with a married woman. Hearing about Alex's assault devastated Jocelyn and Sharon. The guilt of knowing they had caused Floyd's anguish deepened their pain. They realized too late the far-reaching consequences of their actions. Their naive belief that granting Jocelyn one night would preserve their happy family had destroyed everything. For Sharon, the loss of her father's love was unbearable. Mike, her husband, nearly ended their marriage over her involvement in the affair, but therapy helped her come to terms with her actions. She vowed to remain faithful, and after 2 years of proving her commitment, Mike finally agreed to start a family. Floyd, however, cut off all communication with Sharon. She had forever severed the bond between them, and his heart was closed to her. As for Jocelyn, her dreams of a happy future with Floyd and their grandchildren were shattered. She had to continue working just to survive. Gone were the days of luxury and comfort, traded for a small apartment and a job at a local art gallery. The love she once knew was a distant memory, and her days were filled with loneliness and regret. 6 months after that fateful night, Floyd found himself on a beach in Costa Rica, sipping a cold beer outside his new apartment. As he reflected on everything that had happened, he realized something important. Divorce is natural. People grow apart, and moving on is acceptable. But what's not acceptable is staying in a relationship where you are neither valued nor cherished. This would never be his reality again. What does true forgiveness look like after betrayal? Can a marriage survive an affair if both partners are willing to work through it, or is it ultimately doomed? What's the line between personal freedom and loyalty in a committed relationship? How does infidelity impact not only the partners involved but their children, friends, and even the people who get caught in the crossfire? Could a single night of passion lead to the destruction of everything a couple built over decades? And when trust is shattered, is there any hope for redemption, or is the damage irreparable? Would you ever be able to move on from such a betrayal, or would the scars be too deep to heal?